last night right here on 97.3 ESPN. And Saturday afternoon, the Phillies and the Brewers. Doug Glanville was on the call, former Philly. He is set to join us to give us a little more insight on what he saw early in the season. We know, however, this Phillies team was supposed to be a team with bad defense and a lot of offense. A 1-0 game last night, exactly the opposite. The team has struggled offensively. We'll get Doug's perspective on what he saw all weekend long at Citizens Bank Park as Doug Glanville joins us right now, ESPN. And, of course, the Phillies fall 2 out of 3 to the Brewers this weekend up at Citizens Bank Park. Doug, welcome back, man. How you been?
Good to be back. How you doing, man?
All is good, and I know always nice to have you back in Philly and get a chance to see your old stomping grounds. But, man, you're taking a look at a team that I'm sure when you look at that lineup last night, you're like, man, this is a team that's got a lot going for it offensively. But you saw them all weekend long. What do you see? Why is this team struggling to kind of get that big night going offensively?
Yeah, no, there's no doubt that rhythm, they don't have the rhythm yet. And the tough part about having a team that is so offensive-minded and driven by that is it's streaky. We know that you run up against a team like the Brewers, who are known for excellent pitching. You have Josh Hader closing it out, Devin Williams. Those are tough. Those guys can shut down good hitting. So you still have to do those little things. You still have to figure out how to manufacture runs against certain teams when your bats aren't exactly on fire. And that's why it becomes important to have a different type of offense that has other looks. Even though they are bashers, when they're not bashing, they can still go first to third. They can still squeak one across. And, when you see that they have 3 stolen bases, things like that, there's not a lot of versatility to that. So you end up being stuck on the 3-run homer and that kind of game. So if you're going to do that, you have to make sure your pitching keeps runs off the board as well.
I want to get into the pitching in just a bit, but you kind of talk about, so it's kind of a one-dimensional offense. It's a lot of strikeouts. They're a put the ball over the fence type of team. And if they're kind of going through a lull, you're going to see a lot of run-producing innings from them. Not a lot of crooked numbers, as they would say. So you're very prone to a lot of nights where you're going to see stuff like that, where you see these elongated droughts a little bit.
And, the way to counter that is, and I do think they have the talent to do this, is you have a guy like Zach Wheeler, you have Aaron Nola pitch the way he did. Like, you can shut them down with, I think, what could be a pretty good rotation. You're going to need the bullpen to step it up. And we know defense won't be their strong point, but if you can pitch and score enough runs, especially when you're home where you got that last opportunity, you can still win quite a few ball games. So it's going to come down to the same elements, right? You have to pitch. And although they're not saying defense is going to be what is going to be the game changer, they have enough offense that they're planning to outbash the other team. The challenge is when you face a Brewers team that is built for pitching and run prevention, you have to play almost a different ball game, and that's where it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the pitching that you saw this weekend. Nola, he has been the guy who everybody has been waiting, and they're not sure. In 2018, he's third in the Cy Young race, and then he's kind of just been this up-and-down guy, and it almost feels like, Doug, people were ready to kind of give up on him. He's not a top-of-the-rotation guy. Now, the guy you saw last night certainly was, but he has been pretty inconsistent. What do you see from Nola so far, in this young season?
What's tough about evaluating, it's like the Lauer, the pitcher for the Brewers last night. That's a guy that when you dig behind the numbers, you see someone who was deeply affected in 2020 with COVID and the pandemic, lost some time, just all kinds of rhythm issues. His velocity went up, but partly he finally just got healthy and was in the chance to be able to get a normal season. So, a lot of guys got derailed in the last 2 years that you can't really tell who they are. Christian Yelich, there's a long list of these guys, right? So I look at Nola, still a guy that's top of rotation. He has the stuff. He showed it yesterday for sure. And it is consistency, and sometimes consistently relates to the fact that it's been pretty much an interrupted last couple of years. Even with a 2020 full season, you're still dealing with COVID protocols, still just got a lot of stuff going on. So with Nola, what you saw last night was a guy with a great changeup, good curveball, location, used the fastball, stayed out of the middle. And although he's top in 92, when he needed to, get a little more pump, he would do it. So, Nola can be that, a guy that, especially when you have Wheeler, number 2 in the Cy Young voting last year, those are 2 starters that a lot of teams would be very much happy with.
No doubt. And Wheeler, I mean, obviously, he got off to a slow start this year. There was a lot of discussion, I think, during the broadcast last night, too, about how his miles per hour has been down 2 miles per hour, and he didn't get off spring training. He didn't get a chance to face any major league hitters. Did we see a guy who seems like he is now catching up? Because there was some concern that he got a late start because he was had some soreness in his shoulder. But was that apparent at all from what you saw this weekend?
Good velocity. I mean, it wasn't 99, but it's number 97, 96. He was up there, and he relied a lot on his fastball. And when we talked to Craig Counsell, the manager of the Brewers, after facing him the next day, he said that, well, we thought we could possibly catch him. Remember last year, Wheeler dominated the Brewers, just destroyed them. And he wasn't quite that guy. He was, strong, but then that one inning where really his secondary pitches, curveball, they started to hang out over the plate. That's where he got really beat. But it's, like, to the point, short spring training, and a team that is relying on offense as much as the Phillies are relying on it, and you have a scenario, where you have pitchers that are going to be, need to be at their top line, and you have a spring training that's shortened, and you're saying, oh, in May they're going to find their rhythm. That's where you kind of run into those challenges, because they can't afford to be like, oh, let's get everybody back on track, and the next thing you look up, you're 45 days into the season. So they still have to find other ways to win these ball games.
Doug Glanville's our guest, ESPN Baseball, and of course the Phillies lose 2 out of 3. I want to get your take on Alec Bohm. Obviously struggles in the field, and it has been a major struggle to the fact that he essentially lost his job. He essentially has now hit himself back into that job. So what do you make of this? This guy's a 3rd pick over in the draft. And I know in baseball, it's not like football and basketball. When you hear a guy is the number 3 overall pick, you expect an instant kind of change to your organization or franchise. What do you see from Bohm as what kind of player you envision him as?
It's hard not to look at him and see Jason Worth, and it's probably not fair because it's just more of a physical, tall guy with, uses the whole field, potentially has that ability to, hit and got some pop, and just can, has enough athleticism. You see some of that. I think he's, not quite, hit his stride where he needs to be offensively. And the same story, like you have a guy who's drafted, relatively recently and then went through these interrupted seasons. It is kind of hard to see when he's going to gel and get there, because it's still like a growth period. And a lot of people are trying to come back from this rhythmless last couple of years. But yeah, he had his problems and challenge with the fans. He kind of made his point, but the fans of Philly just said, look, I'm going to let you know about yourself, but we appreciate your honesty. We just want you to be accountable to really care about the game, play hard, respect us, and, we got your back. So that could have been, a good watershed moment. If there's any question about, will the Philly fans not notice if you're not playing hard or playing well, that was answered.
Well, I was going to say, Doug,
really
you know what it's like to play here. You know the fans very well. When that whole thing went down, I kind of mentioned the same thing. Like, maybe this is like the aha moment for him of, they're not booing me personally. They're booing the result of the play. And if you could kind of understand that, maybe that can kind of help you get past all of that relationship with the fans that so many players who come here do struggle with.
I loved it. I didn't, look, I grew up a Phillies fan, so it'd almost be like not liking myself, because I was a Phillies fan growing up. So it never made sense to me anyway, because I was like, Phillies had, great years in the 70s, early 80s, and so on. But it was pretty simple for me. I knew play hard, run out every ball, play defense, and even if you're not like a rah-rah guy, I wasn't really rah-rah. I wanted to make sure you could see in my effort. and the fact that all through my whole career as a Philly, I was a fan of Philly. I was a Philly fan still. And look, they got on me. I misread the ball, got a bad read on that play with Eric Milton in the no-hitter. And then, it was upsetting that I got booed and I got thrown at the pitcher threw it sort of towards me because I was bunting the next inning, and I had to go on my back to get out of the way, and they cheered. I wasn't happy, but I knew exactly where it was coming from.
Right.
So like you said, like I messed up a no-hitter, and I did get the bunt down, and we actually won the game. So that was my sort of best way to be like, okay, I hear you. So, it is part of it, but I look at all the years of so many moments that were positive, and we didn't have great teams, but, you remember those too. So yeah, that's how I see it. And, maybe it's because I grew up outside of New York.
Yeah.
I got the city world and all that, but I think Bohm figured it out. He knows what he said in his response was really,
well, he got a standing ovation. So it seems that the fans have like, hey, we appreciate that you notice that we, and I said that and he has played pretty well since he was out of the lineup, and then Girardi kind of put him back. He didn't play for like 3 days after that, and then he put him back in. Now he's been in every day. He's back in the lineup tonight. By the way, the Phillies have just sent Bryson Stott to Lehigh Valley, and they have called up Roman Quinn. And that obviously, Quinn has been another enigma here, and he was gone. Now they brought him back. But they have had all sorts of issues in center field, and their corner outfielders, we know, are not their strong suit. So essentially, it looks like they needed another glove out in the outfield.
Well, in the end, look, if you're going to bet on Kyle Schwarber and Castellanos as your corner outfielders, like, those guys care. They work hard. There's going to be no issue there. But, they're not naturally gifted defenders. They're going to grind it out, and they're not going to have a ton of range as well, in the way that you need to be like a super plus on the defensive side. So you need a center fielder that's going to catch the ball. And just like the last couple of years, they haven't had a lot of success in generating offense out of center field. But in this case, when you go get those kind of bashers, it's not as important. You could kind of deal without the big home run production out of center. Just catch the ball and cover the corners, cover for the corner guys. That's going to be enough. So I think you'll see a revolving door Herrera and all these cats and Vierling, and you'll see it. And maybe someone comes out of the ashes, but it's a great opportunity because they have whoever takes the horns, the reins of center field, it's going to be a great opportunity to play if you just can catch the ball, play some D.
Yeah, and I guess I asked you this question, with that was one of the topics of conversation over at ESPN.com. They were talking about it on the Sunday Night Baseball broadcast. I'm sure you guys discussed it over the weekend on the broadcast. Is the Phillies are well aware that people don't think they're very good defensively. How do they take a look at themselves defensively?
Well, we talked to Joe Girardi before or after the game, both days. And, what he says is that, their team, he's not saying that they have a team that has tremendous range and, sort of making the spectacular long range play. So where do you make up for that? Well, you shift and you understand your defensive alignments, and you have a high defensive efficiency, meaning the plays that are hit to you that are outs, you convert. So he believes, and I think that's, for now, I think it's a reasonable way to look at it. Catch the ball you're supposed to catch. I'm not saying you have to be Ozzie Smith out there, but if you do that and you get the bats and you get the rotation that has the potential that it has, and, you find, your bullpen is going to be the glue, they will be in a position to win. So that's how he looks at it. He wholeheartely believes that this is the possibility. Look, I've seen Castellanos many years. I've seen Schwarber. I did a lot of Cubs games. These guys play hard, man. You're going to have no issue, and if anything happens, they'll hold themselves accountable, and the rest of the players. And so those are very much two accountability guys, and I see that outfield as a result, not being a problem from the standpoint of putting in the work and being prepared.
Yeah, and I know I want to get your take because you obviously you played in both leagues. Well, you played in Texas for a year, but you're generally a National League guy. It seems like Harper not thrilled about DH, and I know he has to because of this elbow. And he said, "Hey, if it wasn't for the DH, I wouldn't be playing." But conversely, I don't. It sounds like a lot of these guys don't like DHing. What do you think about the DH?
It's
Yelich, by the way, Yelich is 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts when he DH'd the other night. He struck out 2 more times last night. He doesn't seem too thrilled about DHing.
Part of the reason the DH has taken on, or at least took on for years, this sort of mature hitter position like a Nelson Cruz, is because it's not just about like, being a basher. It's about knowing how to manage being a DH, knowing how to stay focused when you're not in the game and you're not playing defense. That's hard.
Mm-hmm.
That is hard. And guys that are just getting there or like trying to play and they're still kind of young, it's not something they are going to be used to, especially as a national, more of a lifelong national leaguer, whoever Yelich or whatever. So you have that challenge. And so, yes, they're trying to do it. Ideally, especially early in the season, rotating. Okay, the vision was Castellanos and Harper and Schwarber, and everybody kind of rotates. Well, they can't do that. So it's nice that Harper's in the lineup, but Harper's now a guy that's it's hard to stay engaged as much because he's not in the field. And he's a good he's a defender. He knows how to play that. So that is tough. And so the mindset is what they're going to have to work on. And then what it does is Schwarber and Castellanos to be in the lineup, they have to play every day in the outfield. And that's not the way they had set it up because Harper being on the field makes them a better defense. So, these are the early blues that the Phillies are doing. They're dealing with a short spring without, the pitchers getting where they need to be. And their asset will be in the rotation, but they're not really stretched out yet to do that. You have a team that's trying to, get their footing on defense. And you have an injured Harper who's, limited to DH role. So those are tough ways to start the year.
Yeah, and it's affected, I guess. I mean, they probably want Hoskins to DH sometimes, Bohm to DH sometimes, so they're stronger,
right.
And that has kind of created some issues there. You know what made me think of you, Doug Glanville? I saw your picture with Mickey Morandini on Twitter, thinking that you guys got traded for each other, and you get a chance to kind of see the old mixer.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, towards the end of my career, I started to get my bat signed, just by anybody and, memories, and I got Mickey to sign it. And I'm really thankful to, kind of be connected. He's an ambassador for the Phillies now, so it's good to see him around. And, so we had a good time talking about being traded for each other because it's rare you get traded for someone and then the next year you're actually teammates. That was weird, right? So I got a chance to play with Nick, worked hard, very, very well respected, great with the fans. It was cool. So, so once in a while, I've seen him, every so often, Philly, and so I caught him behind the rope there yesterday, and Milt Thompson was out there, so they were taking pictures like, oh, no, Milt, you got to step out of this photo first, and then we'll come to you. So I kicked him out, and have Mickey Mo, and so, that's what I'm loving, man. Like, I missed seeing all my baseball family for those years of just being on Zoom, and I did a little Cub stuff, but to be at the park, man, every weekend is family reunion for me. And it's just like the hitting coach of the Brewers was my roommate 30 years ago in A-ball, things like that.
Wow.
So I'm pretty thankful that I'm in this game that long and that it's just great to see people again. And so I'm doing a lot more taking pictures and savoring it. So you see me on whatever, Instagram,
I like it.
Twitter.
Well, I was driving in my car and heard you doing the game on Saturday, and I was like, that sounds like Doug is doing the game. And then I saw the picture, and I said, definitely was Doug Glanville, and that's why it made me reach out to you. But I want to ask, because this Mets team, everybody at the beginning is like, they're the Mets, they'll be the Mets. No DeGrom, but this looks like finally we can trust the Mets. Should Philly fans say, that Mets team is actually for real?
They're pretty tough, yeah. I mean, I think the other side of them being tough is that their front office is dead set on getting whatever they need to win. Like they blew through, they're going to blow through luxury taxes and all. They're just trying to, they're willing to spend the money, and they, certainly there's a lot of talent on the field and Scherzer and all these cats. So they're tough, and guys like Scherzer, they bring a certain swagger. It's different. When you have guys like Schwarber who won the World Series, they have a different level of expectation, and I think that's what the Mets were missing. And then Buck Showalter, I played for in 2003. He's a tactician, man. He gets after it. You can't outwork him. He loves being around the ballpark. He keeps the guys loose. He's very good with talking to the press and there's a lot of things that were a good fit for him in New York, being that he was a Yankee manager. He's very familiar. So there's a lot of things that are good there, but it is, you got to do it for 162 and you got to stay healthy.
I'll tell you what, people always question like the role of the baseball manager. and how much of effect they have. But when you have a guy that's that prepared, has the team prepared for all the scenarios, all of the possibilities, I feel like you can see the Mets are much more prepared.
I'll tell you what. I mean, I played in '03, and I watched the guy. I mean, this guy had spy missions for information. I mean, he was looking. I mean, I went on a rehab assignment. I got, hurt early in the season. And I'm in like Nowheresville, like AA somewhere, coming back. He was calling every day, like, hey, what's he been doing? He knew my routine. He knew I was taking a day off. I mean, so I'm like, don't you have a team to manage in the big league? Like, you remember about like A-Rod and Juan Gonzalez. But I appreciated it. He checked in, and he made sure you were staying on routine. So every day, I remember that year he told me, he said, every day I wake up, and I make like 40 phone calls, throughout the organization before I even start focusing on just the big league team. So, attention to detail is definitely there. And it seemed like that's what the Mets were looking for. But look, if Phillies are going to compete, I mean, that's a lineup you got to be really careful with. And there's some young guys that are, just still coming into their own.
Doug Glanville, former Philly ESPN broadcast team, and, of course, kind enough to join us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. I know you had a busy day, Doug. I appreciate you taking a couple moments out.
Yeah, always a pleasure, man. Anytime.
That's Doug Glanville. He was part of the broadcast this weekend that you heard right here on 97.3 ESPN.